Sociocultural theory of language learning and the role of L1. From now onwards, in the next few modules, as long as we are working with this article, we will look at different ways in which the sociocultural theory ascribes a role to the first language of the learners as they move on to learn their second. So, what were the basic tenets of the theory, or what were the basic arguments of the theory? If you would remember, sociocultural theory argues that there is a strong link between learning processes and the sociocultural context. And so, the mental processes and the cultural settings are do not work apart from each other, but exist in a dialogical relationship. That is, they are constantly in dialogue with each other. So no matter what type of experiments you might do, what type of instruction you might bring to your classrooms, you cannot possibly deflect the learner agency. That is, you cannot negate the presence of learner's identity. His beliefs, his agency, all of it will play a part in the learning process. So if we are talking about learner agency, that means this learner agency or the learner's ability to engage with the second language learning will be embedded or influenced by their personal histories. So this will somehow be affected by whatever values they have, whatever assumptions they bring to the class regarding how difficult or easy the task is, how valuable the learning of second language is, and how would it identify them, allow them to build their identity, what are their beliefs, rights, a sense of duty, and language, their attitude towards the first language and the second that they are learning. So the first language, it is argued, comprises what is called the semiotic budget of the learners, or the semiotic budget that works in the given social context. Now, what is this semiotic budget? As you would remember, semiotic or semantics relate to meaning making. So it's kind of a capital, like you have money with you. It is kind of capital that they can use to understand and to express what is going on in the sociocultural setting. So the first language of the learner is extremely valuable because it is inevitably a resource in learning. If I would ask you to start learning German, you would constantly start to make comparisons with your first language to remember the new items from the German language, for instance. So, it is argued that on the basis of general principles of transfer of knowledge, that whenever we are learning something, we try to use our previous knowledge of similar to the one that we are learning to understand the phenomena or to somehow process the information that is coming to us. So the key argument in the sociocultural theory has been that the social context is extremely important because all learning takes place in a social context first, and then it is internalized or becomes personal. That is, the all meaningful learning then occurs in interaction. So it's extremely important that those interactions actually are meaningful and they do take place for any sort of individual learning to take place. Now, if we are talking about interactions, we are talking about social context, then of course you need a language. The learner needs a language to interact within the social setting. And this brings us back to the first language of the learner. And we can see that the first language of the learner facilitates interaction even within the classroom. And it allows the learner to make the learning meaningful. An example in this regard is that if you are teaching a structure or grammar item, for example, passive tense to your students, if they don't really know the language, they don't know how to use English language, how will they possibly ask questions related to the form that is coming to them? They need their own language to interact with someone, either a peer, either a class fellow, or a teacher, to make sense of what is being taught. So we will now take the three basic tenets or three basic concepts of socio-cultural theory and see how those within these three concepts of mediation, scaffolding and zone of proximal development, and inner speech, how does the role of L1 fare in these, and what is the role that comes out or emerges under the theory of socio-cultural learning.